we're trying to proactively find as much as possible as we could do to make an impact on the community.
Yeah.
Are there communal nightmares given? No, it's just there are bigger people for that.
Yeah.
There are bigger, more important, more powerful people that are tasked with those positions. For me, it's what can we do to continue to make an impact, to make someone's life better, to make the world a better place, to make the world a more religious place, to help. I'm not talking about on a global scale, because a global scale, by the way, it's very hard to feel. On a small scale, to make an impact on someone's life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much easier to feel and do within your community, right? Rather than...
And that ultimately is how you do it on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I think some people excuse themselves from doing it on a small scale because you're busy with global aspirations, and it's hard to do it like that.
Welcome back to the Leading Saints podcast. This is a fun discussion to have, and I'm glad you get to experience it, and I hope you'll share it, but maybe more of an interfaith type of approach, where I talk with Rabbi Chaim, who is the rabbi for the Chabad, the Jewish Chabad here in Utah County. Obviously a place that is very Latter-day Saint. And what is it like being Jewish here as far as leading the Jewish people in this part of the world, the experience like? And there's so many similarities, right, between our faith and their faith, from health codes to seems like there's a lot of laws and commandments and covenants and all those things, right? It was just fun to sit down with Rabbi Chaim and go through these things as far as he is processing the world of religion, from how he lives his faith, why he does, conversion, testimony, all those things. And man, I could have gone on for 4 hours, so we'll definitely get him back in the studio a future day and continue our discussion, but you'll enjoy it. Here's my interview with Rabbi Chaim. All right, a little, I don't know the best term to use, unorthodox, but very orthodox interview to have is with the rabbi of Utah County, Rabbi Chaim. Did I say that right?
Said it perfectly.
What's your full name? How do you like?
My name is Chaim Zippel. No middle name.
Zippel. Is middle name's not a Jewish thing, or just not
I'm the
Chaim
only one
thing?
in my family without a middle name.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I like to tell people we are a poor family. We can only afford one name.
Nice. And you are, I mean, how do you describe your position and what you run and all those things?
So my wife and I are co-directors of the Chabad of Utah County, which is a grassroots nonprofit that works with establishing a home for Jewish experiences in Utah County, which means first and foremost, a place where Jewish people that are moving in, we know that people are moving in from all over, California, everywhere, for jobs, for the beautiful family life here.
Yeah.
So the Jewish folks that are heading in and we want to have a place to gather together as a community, or to learn more about their faith, to try to grow, to try to learn, first and foremost, but also to be a presence of Judaism for everybody.
Yeah.
I shared with you, I just came a minute ago from speaking at BYU. 0 people, as far as I know, in that class were Jewish, but people want to learn, they want to be educated, and we try to fill that need.
Nice. So if you're a Jewish person in Utah County, like, do you run the synagogue and things like that, or is that's all encompassed in that?
Yeah. So I think where Judaism might be a little bit different than some other faiths in Utah is that prayer is the thing, services, synagogue, words like that are the things that you'll tend to see will have the least attendance, because as much as everybody prays, that could be more of a personal thing that you do on your own. The prayers, like on Sabbath and daily, that's often one of the things that you end up doing last, just because it's not the most pleasant thing in the world, right? No one's like, I'm dying to go pray in synagogue today. Maybe if the rabbi had a better cantorial voice, but it's because you want to do the social things, right? It's like, oh, there's a holiday going on, so let me go learn about the holiday while dressing up in costumes, while doing fun activities, while having fun entertainment. Those are like, the events are always the biggest. And then as people continue to grow, continue to learn more, to continue to come for classes, so it's like, okay, I would love to come for services. But yeah, so we don't yet have just, it's a funding thing. Eventually we'll get there. We don't yet have a full-time building, so everything's out of our home. But I would say most Friday nights, our basement gets transformed into a synagogue. We have men and women that come for Friday night services. and whenever else, Saturday morning sometimes, whenever else appropriate.
Yeah. So like as a Latter-day Saint or as a Christian, I may move to a new area, and that's sort of where my mind goes. I need to find a church to attend, but that may not be the first thing that they're looking for. They're more looking for the community of Jews. Is that?
Yeah, just because being all in with Judaism, keeping everything, is very challenging. Which is why, like, very often you'll meet people in town here that are not Jewish, and they'll say like, "Oh, what's your community? Is your community Orthodox? Is your community Reformed?" There's different like labels in Judaism, and I say our community is everything. Like, if you want to know how many people look crazy like I do, it's just me. It's a party of one, family of one. But people are on all different levels of their Jewish experience. The one thing that I think that we all try to have in common is that we're all on an upwards trajectory. We're trying to be doing more and growing. So while I pray 3 times a day, not everybody's holding there yet. Mm-hmm. But even if you're not holding there yet, you absolutely want to come experience the holidays. You want to experience community. You want to grow together.
Yeah. And so with well, maybe ask you what's your background as far as coming to Utah and where you're at now? How did this journey lead here?
So I grew up in Salt Lake. My dad is Italian, originally from Milan. My mom is Canadian, originally from Toronto. They got married and naturally decided that a fair middle ground, normal place to live is Utah.
Naturally, sure.
The movement that we're part of is called Chabad. The Rebbe, who was the leader of the Chabad movement, started this initiative of sending couples to every place possible, so that no matter where a Jewish person might find themselves, they have an outlet, they have a place where they can go and experience meaningful Jewish experiences.
Yeah.
So when my parents moved out in 1992, it was a lot less saturated. So like there were not only states, like there were chunks of the country that were not yet represented. So they were going through a few different options. They were looking at Puerto Rico, they were looking at Denmark, and they were looking at Utah, and different things fell into place, and Utah was what was decided. So they got a blessing from the Rebbe, from the leader of the Chabad movement, to come and launch Chabad in Salt Lake City, Chabad in Utah, which didn't only serve the whole state, like it was serving Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. Like there was no one in any of these states. And they built it's still not New York or Brooklyn or Miami or Los Angeles here or Israel, but there's a nice amount of Jewish infrastructure. There's some synagogues, there's Chabad centers, there's a couple of eateries. My parents built all that from scratch. So I grew up here. I grew up in Salt Lake City in Sugar House. And there are 6 of us. I have 5 siblings. Each of us sort of took a different perspective. Like I had a couple siblings that were like, absolutely no matter what, like I'm moving back here to do this. Like I got it. I want to continue this mission. This is where I want to be. This is what I got to do. I had some siblings that were like, absolutely not. And they're, I like to say, some of us are normal. They went out and they got jobs. They're living in regular places like Atlanta, Georgia, and Miami, Florida, going to work every day from 9 to 5. I was sort of in between, where I was like, I appreciated and I always felt good about the work that was being done, and I loved being part of it. But I was like, if there's when my parents moved, I looked at it like there was a real need. Now, a lot of communities, a lot of the bigger communities are spoken for, and there's a lot of people looking to go. So I was like, if there's a need, count me in. But for me to be eager to go and to force an opportunity based off my desire to go, no, not necessarily. Mm-hmm. When I left when I was 13, 14 to go to get education in Jewish schools. I was in California, I was in Pennsylvania, I was in Brooklyn. I ended up working in my low 20s in schools, in Jewish schools. My role was as a program, like extracurricular programs. And I saw like how much energy and how impactful like these extra programs were that you add in these schools that I didn't grow up with. So I was like, even if my wife and I are crazy enough to decide to move somewhere that doesn't have necessarily the kosher the food options and the entertainment options and the schooling options, like maybe we're crazy enough, but can we make that decision for our kids? Because I knew that I grew up without any other Jewish kids. I would say any other Orthodox kids, like kids like me to hang out with, like-minded kids. So it wasn't something that I was like absolutely going to happen. But the opportunity continued to, it was just showing that there was a need here repeatedly. Like my father has been coming down to Utah County since almost the first year he opened, just because there's a large amount of treatment centers here in Provo, in Spanish Fork, in Utah County for kids from all around the world, literally, that have all different types of therapy that they need. Kids at risk mostly. So my dad's been servicing these centers for years, and Wednesday, which is today, is his day. I know that my dad is not in the office on Wednesday. Wednesday is the one day every single week for I don't know how many years now that my dad travels down to Utah County, and he literally just drives from center to center to center to center. So,
and he's looking for like Jewish individuals who he can minister to or connect with, or.
So he gets the first time he got a call, someone calls her like, "Is this the rabbi?" "Yeah, there's a Jewish kid in Provo, Utah." "What's a Jewish kid doing in Provo, Utah?" And he drives down to the center to go visit this child, to speak, to be a friendly face, to be an ear, to listen to this child, teenager. And my dad says, like, I couldn't believe there's Jewish kids here. And the kid's like, "What are you talking about?" Jewish,
Oh, wow.
pointing around. Unfortunately, the kids come from all over. So he tries as much as possible to be able to visit these children and to provide for them, to teach them a little bit, to learn with them, to be a friendly face and someone that cares.
Yeah.
So he's doing these weekly trips, and he's seeing how the need here is growing. There's like more and more and more people calling me like, "Hey, I live there." And by the way, I could just, we'll skip ahead a minute. I could tell you, being here, like how many people we find now that are like, "Oh yeah, I moved here 5 years ago from California. When I got here, I looked, I know there's a center in Salt Lake. It was too far. So I just went into hiding. Like I just, it's too far, too much of a commitment." So my dad started seeing that need, and it kept presenting itself to us. And we felt that this was the move that was necessary for us. I'll mention my wife was really the driving factor in that one. And she didn't grow up crazy like I did. She was born in Israel, and she lived in Brooklyn. She went to a Jewish school every single day. That was a block from her house. She grew up with a kosher bodega. For those who are not from Brooklyn, a bodega is just a store that they decided to give a new word to for no reason. But kosher bodega on one block and another one on the next block. And she was like, "Absolutely, we got to do this."
So she grew up in a place that you'd say wasn't as orthodox as your background. Is that what you're saying?
Way more.
Oh, way more. Okay.
She grew up, every inch of her life was there were a couple hundred Jewish kids in her class alone.
Gotcha.
Thousands of Jewish
you'd
students.
expected her to want to go back to that kind of a area, right?
Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned the Chabad movement. Is that because we come from a very institutionalized church where there's a next layer, you can talk to this guy, and if you don't know, you talk to the next guys. But is that similar to? I mean, how would you describe that movement, or what is it? Is it more institutionalized or more open that way?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, you'll let me know based on the answer if I understood you. It's not really one large organization like you might compare to how the way the church functions. Like very often, my dad had this and I have this, that people will say like, "Oh, it's so nice," like as if like corporate in New York gave you a seed money to go get started, and they pay your salary, and you're representing the company. Like there is a centralized organization, so like you have to abide by certain rules to represent this organization and keep true to the mission. But like financially, you're 100% on your own, and they're not like calling you being like, "Hey, this month we're all going to do this." They're getting better at the sense that they're offering more resources, just because common experiences are being had in 5,000 different centers around the world, and everybody needs an idea for a holiday theme and that type of thing, some professional development. But each center sort of functions on their own. Now, in every state, it works differently. Meaning, like there's a head Chabad Rabbi in every state. That's my dad in Utah. I always say, by the way, the rabbi in Park City, not related.
Okay.
Which is just reminding us that it's not a family business. It's my dad always was looking for the most qualified person. It happened to be in a couple of experiences that was a relative, but the rabbi in Park City is our reminder that it's not always about that. But my point is, in some states, like the rabbi in charge has, "Hey, we don't do XYZ. When you want to do XYZ, these are the rules." And like there's also sometimes, like very often, we're fortunate, like sometimes the main center will help with a little bit with funding and definitely help get you off the ground. But in every state, it sort of works differently. But it's definitely not like system in such a way.
Yeah. So when you say, we don't do XYZ, what are some examples of things that people would be looking for from you that maybe you don't do? Or
I don't know about that. It's more... So, first of all, we don't deal with that in Utah. My dad is pretty understanding and helpful and in all those ways. I know in one state where they have a lot of centers, it's a very Jewish populated state, the lead Chabad Rabbi there has different rules for events that correspond with Jewish law.
Okay.
Which means basically he has the option where he could create policies, or he could just let each center, because they're self-funded, make their own decisions. And they'll all eventually, at least we assume, end up abiding by Jewish law. But the rabbi in the state decided, no, I'm creating certain rules that we have to abide by, even if they're a little bit beyond. Or in some, very often it's like, no, you guys just, everyone has their rabbi rabbinical leadership that they'll speak with and make sure that they're falling in line with that.
Yeah. And then just growing up in Utah, like being in such a high density Latter-day Saint world, like what comes to mind? Like, what was that like? Or was it hard to find that community? Did you find yourselves at, youth nights at our churches or anything like that? Like, what was it like growing up as a Jew, a very Orthodox Jew in this area?
So I had 3 thoughts flew into my head. I'll see how many of them I remember to say.
All right.
Number 1, we did an event here. It was actually in Park City. I was helping arrange it. It was in Park City on December 25th. It was a Hanukkah event. And the singer, who's a friend of mine, lands here and he says, I'm like, hey, what do you need? He's like, I'm a coffee snob. So I was like, so you're saying you don't want my Keurig? He's like, no, I don't. First, I don't do foam cups. And second of all, I don't, in a nice way, not in a deep way. We're actually close. So he said, I was just with him a couple of days ago. So he says, let's find a coffee shop. So I said, Ellie, that's his first name. You're in Utah. And it's December 25th. You have 0% chance of finding an open coffee shop today.
Especially without foam cups, right?
Foam cups. So he says, let's see. And he goes and he Googles, and we find ourselves in the heart of Salt Lake City at a coffee shop that's bustling on December 25th. Wow. I use that to lead into my second point, and that is, I'm all the time asked, for as long as I can remember, like, what's it like living in Utah? Like, do you see Mormon people around? And I'm like, that they don't like have like, they're not like us. They don't walk around with like these identifiers on their hats. So right. Like that's a Mormon. Like it's just, it's regular people. So they're like, okay, I'm coming to Utah. Let's see how many we can find. I'm like, what are you looking for?
Yeah.
Average people. So in that regard, it never was something that ever felt funny or felt different to me. I will say, and I successfully remembered all 3 points.
Nice.
So I mentioned I just came from BYU. So one of the students asked, he's like, have you ever had any anti-Semitism you had to deal with, and how did you respond? So what I shared with this student, was that I always say, and this is true, I'm going to make a disclaimer here. You might get some hate in your comments. Okay. This is true of Utah County. I wouldn't say this is true of all of Utah. This is true of Utah County. Salt Lake County is their own rules. But Utah County, because of the high density of religious people and religious families, it is probably the least anti-Semitic place on earth.
Wow.
Like everybody is loving and caring. After October 7th, we did an event here for the whole community, not just for the Jewish community, like in support of Israel. And we had these signs that say, Utah stands with Israel. I think that's what it said, something to that extent. And I put one in my lawn. I know a lot of it, like politicians did, and a lot of friends did. I put one in my lawn, and we had like a crazy windstorm, and the leg on it snapped. And I didn't get a chance to fix it right away. Just, I don't know, it's not the biggest deal. It's not like the top of my priority list as a rabbi is have a lawn sign that lets people know I stand with Israel. Yeah. And I wake up the next morning, and someone had come during the night and reinforced it with like this steel rod, like not like an easy fix, like put it in the ground and zip tied it so that it's standing. No idea who. A couple weeks later, the other leg knocks out. And next morning, exact same thing. Woke up, steel rod. Took a picture of it, actually. Steel rod, zip tied in the ground. That's Utah County.
Even the wind can't be anti-Semitic.
The wind was mildly anti-Semitic, but Utah County picked up the pieces.
Wow, that's incredible.
So what I shared was, my family was in Israel on October 7th. We were in the south of Israel. It was crazy. We did not have our phones on because it was on a Saturday. We don't use our phones on the Sabbath. And when I turned my phone on Saturday night, one of the things that like really struck me, like it really like hit me deep, was someone shared, it ended up on my Twitter feed, X, a video from downtown Salt Lake City. There was like a couple of, I don't know if there were university students or somebody like dancing, celebrating what happened. And I'll remind you, this was on October 7, not even October 8. This was before Israel responded and people had all different types of opinions, and that it's a different story a little bit after that. This was raw. It was terrorist attack happens. So if this was in New York, I wouldn't have thought twice. Like I would even be like, why is this news? Because we're familiar, we're used to this. But when I see this in Utah, it was like shocking to me, because I think that illustrates, that reaction, that feeling illustrates the constant feeling of support, again, at least in Utah County, that we are subject to. It's just a division that I make. Yeah. I still think Salt Lake City, in comparison to many of the other places in this country, we're a lot better off. But from my experience, there's a clear difference between Salt Lake and Lehigh in Utah County.
Yeah. Interesting. Take me just as your role as a rabbi, like, is that something that anybody can have ambitions for and become, or what's the process like? Or
so the word rabbi could mean a lot of things, first of all. My term rabbi here means that I am the spiritual leader of our community here. Then there's rabbis that are like rabbinic experts, meaning that Jewish law is deeply complicated. And at any point, very confusing questions can come up. So basic questions, I can answer those. I went through rabbinical ordination. I learned in yeshiva in school for years. But too often, like a complicated question comes up, or more than that. Sometimes it's not even like a doubt, like what do I do here? Sometimes it's like, I need to know if I can get authorization to do XYZ. And in that case, you need a rabbinic expert. So I have a rabbi in California that I call for all these types of questions. Okay. Also, I'll call him for guidance. But rabbi can mean different things in that regard. But yeah, there are stories which are deeply inspiring. There's one that comes to mind of a rabbi that moved to a college in Texas, and he worked as a Chabad Rabbi trying to reconnect Jews there with their roots and help them grow and bring them back to a life of Torah, a life of Judaism, even those that didn't grow up with it. And there was a particular student at Texas, I don't remember exactly which university it was, became close with this rabbi, ended up putting his university education aside. Maybe he graduated, maybe not, I don't remember, but ended up like deciding he wants to go to yeshiva. He wants to go to school and learn 100% of his time. Became religious for the first time in his life. He did not grow up with it, got married, and moved to become a Chabad rabbi in that same university, working for that rabbi that turned his life around. Interesting. So is it something that everyone can aspire to? Absolutely. Do you have the ability to put your head down to get it done? I don't even know if I would in that circumstance, but aspire, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a long road, and it might be easier to become a brain surgeon at times, right? with what's required there. But do you find, like with Latter-day Saints, I mean, we have a deep belief in the children of Israel, and we sometimes, we have beliefs that sort of connect us to the house of Israel and things. Do you kind of feel like there's this overemphasis of Latter-day Saints sort of wanting to connect with your people? I mean, does that make sense? I mean, what comes to mind or what have you seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say this on there, so we'll edit this part out. Okay. We have a couple in this room.
It's all right. We have a studio audience here.
Studio audience.
Yeah.
That's why if you hear the laughs in the back, it's not a laugh track. Leading Saints podcast does not use a laugh track.
That's right.
We're very serious people. We have a studio audience with us.
That's right.
And I did not bring them.
I invited them.
So they're not being paid. Unless Kurt, I'm sorry. Absolutely. I mentioned that we don't have yet a full-time center. We're based out of our home. So all the time, when we put a flyer out there, when you put an event out there, when you put a class, when you put whatever it is, we're getting requests like, hey, I want to learn about your faith. I want to come pop in. Can I do that? And it's tough. It really is tough. But too often we find that we have to say, like, while we're absolutely okay and we appreciate the support, like, we're just like maxed with capacity. I was like, if we had a center, it would likely be filled all the time, because you have all different types of people. Yeah, very often Latter-day Saints that want to come and experience, and it's just a space restriction. But yeah, absolutely, the desire is there.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there's some similarities, but they can maybe pale in comparison. Like we say, oh, you've got a health code, a diet code, like so do we, right? But they're very different. I mean, as far as you've talked about the complexities of these things.
I started my talk at BYU today with a confession that I had just had a coffee. Okay. I apologized.
And others in the room had bacon, and it's like,
yeah. I mentioned so Kurt, you and I met at the comedy show that our community hosted a couple weeks ago, and I'm not going to succeed at saying this, even with the 30% of the delivery the comedian did, but I believe that what he opened with was that when he was on campus at BYU filming content, he had a disagreement with one of the students over what tastes better, or what is more important, or what someone's missing out on more, whether that's coffee, or I believe he said shellfish.
Oh, okay.
Lobster that he said, and they had to bring in a third party to settle it, because obviously neither of them could comment, and right. the third party said it was coffee. So yeah, again, I don't say this to provoke. So yeah, I'm sorry. Confessions.
Sure. And as I've had interactions with like some of my evangelical friends, they look at me like, what's the deal with coffee? And I'm like, don't find reason behind it. It is what it is, right? I can maybe come up with some reasons why, but do you kind of feel that way a lot with some of your restrictions? Sort of like, it's not worth trying to just explain why we do this. It's just the law.
So first of all, I love that you guys don't drink coffee. For the simple reason that I'll all the time be like speaking at interfaith events, and I'll start talking about some of our practices or kosher or something like that. And like, you start to feel when the room's like raising an eyebrow, like, is this guy serious? And then it's like right at that moment where I pop in and I'm like, but you guys don't drink coffee. And it's like, okay, fine, fair play.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yeah. It's not, it's exactly like you're saying, and it's also not exactly like you're saying.
Okay.
It's just what we do because I don't have the patience to explain it. It's the Torah has 613 mitzvahs, 613 do's and don'ts. Mm-hmm. Every single one of those 613 do's and don'ts fits into one of three boxes. Okay? Box number 1 is called in Hebrew mishpatim. Those are the laws that make a ton of sense. So had the Torah not told us to do that, we would probably not do it. Does the I don't know if there's I'm blanking on the exact word for it, but does the code of laws and rules in the LDS faith tell you not to kill?
I mean, other than like the 10 Commandments or, but,
okay. My point is, no. And if it doesn't, you still don't, because, right. Well, A, that's a law and you don't want to go to prison, but B, it makes a lot of sense because homicide is a bad idea.
Right.
Theft is a bad idea. Being immoral is a bad idea. Mm-hmm. So those are you could try this, by the way. If you go home, you Google the list, go find on Wikipedia, list of the 613 mitzvahs, 613 do's and don'ts in Judaism, and then start going through them. See, let me try this. So one box is the ones that make a ton of sense. Had the Torah not told us, we might do them anyways because that's logical. Box number 2 are ones that remind us of something. It's called eidos in Hebrew, such as Shabbat. God created the world in 6 days. On the 7th day, he rested. So for us, every 7th day, we rest. If the Torah didn't tell us to do so, we wouldn't do that on our own,
right?
But we understand why. Mm-hmm. Then you have the third and the least popular box. The least popular box, the ones that people like the least. In Hebrew, it's called chukim. Chukim is a decree, is the literal translation. There are mitzvahs that we are given, and the reason why we do it is because I said so, because God said so. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of examples. One of those is kosher. There actually is no reason why bacon, why pork is not kosher and steak is kosher. There is not. Mm-hmm. This is always the thing that people spend the most time on. meaning I'll say of other faiths, especially trying to get to the bottom of it. The first time I spoke at BYU about kosher, the professor sent me, who's become a close friend at this point, sent me the curriculum that they're working on. He's like, here, if you want to prepare, this is what we're basing our lesson off of. So if you can if you want to, sync up. And the entire curriculum was like, so here's one reason why, and here's the second reason why. And I walked in and I'm like, guys, there only is one reason why. And the reason why is because God said so.
Yeah.
And it's not based off human logic. God is way beyond human logic. And if you're an employee at any company and you opt to only do the work that you feel like doing or you understand, or you only want to show up on the days that you feel like showing up, you're going to be fired. You're a bad employee. Same thing in class. If you're a student and you only take the tests for the classes that you like, you're going to fail. With God, even more so. And that is becoming, by the way, harder and harder as the generations go on, because in 2025 we want to be intellectual. We want to do what we understand and what we feel like and what we connect with. Mm-hmm. And while that's important, you can't lose that aspect of your life, especially in religion, but in relationships it will help you in every way of life. You can't lose that notion of doing something even if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
Kosher is because God said so. Will you find explanations in different books that could try after the fact to explain what may be the underlying reason? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nachmanides deals with it. Maimonides deals with it. There's plenty of people that deal with that back and forth. But none of those are the reason why. The reason why is because God said so.
Yeah. I think human nature, we want to put it in that first box of like, well, obviously there's logic behind this and let's find it and then we'll all understand, right? But then you discover there's no logic, or there's things we don't do that feels like maybe we should do that because the logic's there. But no. It all comes back to God said so.
And we cannot lose. That is something that I think that our kids need to be reminded of. Like as the generations go on, it's more about hey, don't be such a rough, don't speak so roughly with your kids. It's all about don't tell them no, let them make their own decisions. It's all about no, let the kids make. No, some things we have to instill that there's authority, and if the next generation grows up where everything is about what I feel like and everything is about my understanding, they're going to struggle, and they're going to have a hard time with religion, and they're going to have a hard time with holding down a job. And I think that we're even seeing that a little bit. Mm-hmm. While it's important that we understand things, because that enables us to be a lot more passionate when we do it, we cannot lose the notion of some things are beyond our understanding.
Yeah, I think that's powerful, and we lose that, like you mentioned. In our faith tradition, there's such a strong foundation or a principle, I'd say, better said, is as far as conversion or testimony. Oftentimes as we articulate our faith, we go to a place of maybe an experience we had that was hyper spiritual, that really shifted our understanding and feelings towards God. Is that similar in your world as far as why are you so committed? Was there experience or a moment, or do you frame it differently?
That's a tough one. It's all about experience. I think for everybody it's about experiences, but some people, everybody has their journey in life. Let's say it like that. So some people, it's all about it took an experience to shake you up. I'm trying to find the right words on this, because I actually spoke with a professor at BYU about this. Something that I think the LDS faith and the Jewish faith have in common is there's a lot of rules, right? It's not about some faiths are literally just not to put it down, but as long as you show up on Sunday and you do your thing, that is your religion, and then everything else is your personal life. Mm-hmm. Judaism is the opposite extreme. Judaism is the strongest religion in the sense that there are rules that pertain to everywhere all the time. But I think the LDS faith is somewhere in between on that one. Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot more active involvement and active rules. Correct?
Yeah, I'd agree. Mm-hmm.
So I think something that both faiths share is that people will tend to, in their teenage years, rebel a little bit if it's being shoved down your throat. It's push back. Let me try. I'm going to go sneak it. I'm joking on this one, just expressing the point. Yeah. I'm going to go sneak a coffee in my room, right? Or the Torah wants me to not be or I wouldn't say the Torah, it's customary in my faith not to be in a co-ed school. I'm gonna go talk to a girl without my parents knowing about it. So now some people will rebel to the extreme, and that experience will eventually lead them back to a drastic turnaround. And some people never really step out of line to such an extreme. They're like just constantly like pushing back a little bit, and then they're saying like, no, this is what I want, this is what I like. So everybody's different. Sometimes it's very much guided by our experiences, and some people just it's small things that keep us appreciating all along the way without stepping out of line, without, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah and sort of some people are okay with that or can sit with that, like, yes, the teenager's sort of wavering, but maybe it's to the greater good, the greater story that leads them back to faith. Is that fair to say? I mean, and some are more comfortable with that than others. So something, no, this is terrible, this should never happen.
The challenge is keeping objective when it's someone that you love, and like you want them to do what you're doing, but you also want them to make their own decisions. It's just about, I think, remaining objective. Yeah. Like we talked about these children at youth in Utah, right? So when a child is struggling and it comes to the point that they have to go to therapy, they have to go get better. Sometimes the parents will be like, what do you mean send them to Utah? How could you keep kosher in Utah? How could they pray 3 times a day with a minyan, which means with a quorum of 10 people in Utah? How could they do daily Torah study in Utah? And my father very often has to step in and remind them, or if we're speaking to one of these families, because we're starting to step into that role a little bit, like right now you're talking about life or death. Right now you're talking about your child's health. And sometimes what's necessary is to just understand that all has to go on pause for a minute so that the child could be healthy. The Torah says, v'chai b'hem. V'chai b'hem is a Hebrew word, means you should live by them, which means health comes first. I'm diabetic, okay? Which means I wear an insulin pump, which is electric, even on Shabbat, right? There's no concept of being fanatics of saying, no, on Shabbat, I'm just gonna take my chances. Yeah. No, on the contrary, actually, I remember there's a certain diabetic product that was invented a few years ago, maybe at this point, 10 years ago, maybe a little less, that checks your blood sugar constantly. I used to prick my finger, and now it's electric. It's on my phone, and it checks your blood sugar constantly. And there was like an article written from a halachic expert, from a rabbi that's an expert in Torah law, that was saying that while we might not be eager to go switch because it's me feel weird being on your phone on Sabbath, but actually this is a much better option than pricking your finger. Right now, pricking your finger, causing yourself to bleed on the Shabbat is also an issue. And also you're in better control if you're constantly being checked versus checking once in a while. So yeah, Torah says be healthy. So I first of all have completely lost sight of your question, I think. But now that I'm on a tangent, health comes first. Yeah. So also in these cases where your child is struggling, health comes first. So you have to just be okay with, obviously you try to create a system in which if the child is holding there and they want that, you could try to have as much Jewish infrastructure as possible while they're here, but you can't shove it down their throats while they're struggling with other things. Maybe that is even what's causing them to struggle. You got to first focus on health, and then you get back to the rest. Yeah. And obviously consult with rabbinic experts before doing this, and not off a one-off thing you heard from a rabbi in a podcast in a basement in, I can't tell you where we are.
We're in Orem.
Orem, undisclosed location.
That's right. So along the line, as far as conversion, like obviously in our faith tradition, we literally send people out to go proselytize and gather Israel, as we say it. Is that a tension point in your faith? Like, is your desire that more and more even Latter-day Saints or Christians or atheists will become Jewish? Or how do you frame just that, like gathering people and converting them to the law that you follow?
There's a fantastic piece from a comedian on this that I almost want to like play the soundbite into the microphone, but I won't, and I can't, just because. Anyways, logistics. But I think that Judaism is different from any other faith, and especially different from the LDS faith, in the sense that we don't pursue conversion at all. At all. Meaning, I say this all the time. If somebody came over to me and they're like, Rabbi, I'm really craving bacon right now. Should I go eat bacon? They were not Jewish. I would be like, absolutely. Like, I hear it's fantastic. Like, I can't, so don't offer me any. Wish I could, but I can't. But you absolutely should, because it's not our view that the whole world should be Jewish. It's also not our view that the whole world should do what we do. Like, we are descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and the 12 tribes, and from there, and like continues to go down Moses. So these are the rules that we have to live by. And some people in the world are normal. I say it as a joke, but my point is, others do not have to do what we do. And it's not our desire that everybody should be Jewish. There's something called the 7 laws of Noah, the 7 Noahide laws. That is the one initiative we take, that these were laws that God did not give to the Jewish people. These were laws that God gave to the children of Noah, which the entire population, the entire world are descendants of. And these are 7 laws. I don't think I'm going to list them here. People could Google them. They're very easily accessible. These are laws that everybody should live by. And these are laws that if everybody lived by, the world would be a lot more of a godly place, and they're not too hard. So that is one thing that we're like, okay, let's spread that message. Let's spread the message of the 7 laws of Noah. But as far as making the whole world Jewish, absolutely not. And this is where that comedians piece comes in. Actually, like, we'll get calls from people that are like, oh, I want to convert to Judaism. Very often it's like people that like try every faith, and we're like, I don't know if that's for you.
Yeah.
It's literally the comedian says that. Comedian says, you want to convert to this faith? Oh, you're in. You convert to that faith, you're in. You want to convert to Judaism? I don't know if you're a good fit. Meaning, the reason why it's a challenge is, first of all, it's super challenging living as a fully Torah observant Jew in Utah. It's very hard. So very often we've had plenty of conversions, by the way, that have happened over the years, from people that were very passionate about it. And the next step always was that they moved away. I don't know of, there are no Jewish converts through Chabad, through Orthodox conversion, that are still living in Utah. Because it's not a thriving Jewish community. It's a growing Jewish community. It's not a thriving. There's not 100 restaurants and 50 synagogues. Every town needs to have multiple synagogues, because there's all the ones that I don't go to. Right? If there's one synagogue, it's boring. That's the one I go to. You need to have all the ones you don't go to. You need to have classes, like lots going on. And we don't have the infrastructure for that.
Yeah.
And so very often there's a process to it too, where there's like courts, there's rabbinic courts in bigger Jewish communities that process conversions. I can't process a conversion. You need a rabbinic court. And very often they'll be like, how far do you live from synagogue? How are you going to walk there on Saturday when you can't drive?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are you doing for kosher? What are you doing to educate your children? So very often, like, we'll be the first ones to discourage it just because of the challenges there within. Yeah. And like, I have never had a piece of pork in my life, a piece of bacon in my life, right? I don't know what I'm missing, so I'm okay with it.
Right. Same with coffee for me, but I mean, it smells pretty good. But
I'm sorry, I hope I'm not tempting you here today. Somebody that grew up eating it all the time, they're like, I want to be Jewish. So like, that thing that was 100% acceptable to, I just said I would encourage you to eat it, just went overnight. Let's say you process your conversion at 12:01 daylight savings time. So that today, that's 100% allowed. No problem. Eat it, enjoy yourself. And tomorrow, all of a sudden, it's a sin. It's a problem. But we're humans and we have desires. So now you're going to, let's say maybe you're firm enough to not have it, but maybe you're not. So now you just, for no reason at all, just switched from making this activity 100% okay to making this something that you're filled with guilt over and something that you're not supposed to be doing. For what reason?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, a big tension point in like Christianity, including Latter-day Saints, is this feeling of like the decline of faith, or people leaving our faith, or our children, not remaining as active. Is that a tension point in your perspective that you see, or how do you frame that?
That's something that I devoted, my wife and I devoted our life to helping support. I wouldn't say it's a tension point. It happens. So let's find ways to, I guess that this goes to the core of how would you define a tension point, but it's something that is exactly what we are committed to helping people that have grown up without any Jewish experience, whether that's because 2 generations ago or 3 generations ago, however long ago somebody left the faith. But now let's just be there and be supportive and be a place where they can come and learn without judgment and on their own level. Yeah.
Yeah. And so at least that you're going to make a space where that can happen. You're not necessarily worried or going out there and making sure like you don't lose people, but it's
it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
But like our community is not filled with people that look like me that I'm worried we might lose, right? Because they don't tend to live in Utah.
Yeah.
Our community is filled with people that are on the upwards trajectory, people that are making their way back, people that are learning, they're looking to grow. But yeah, I think as a nation, again, I don't live in Brooklyn, so I'm not. That's not something that I struggle with. But as a nation, like yeah, we're trying to just make sure that it's something that is positive.
Yeah.
It's something that people want to stick to.
Yeah. So as a faith leader, what would you say? Like, what keeps you up at night? Like, what worries you the most?
My kids screaming, mostly. At least that was last night.
Okay. But generally speaking,
what keeps me up at night?
what do you worry about as a faith leader?
Okay. Your phrase gets because
Is that better?
I know how to put it out. I go to sleep. Honestly, just because you're open to that can of worms, like there's a book called the Tanya. Beautiful book. I learned it with a lot of people. It's Kabbalah, and a lot of what the Tanya discusses is like the struggle a lot of people have between like their desire to do good and their desire for self-indulgence. Mm-hmm. And like one of the principles that laid out, I was just learning with somebody recently, and this person I was learning with has been a physician for a number of years, and I learned this with him, and he's like, I want to try that, and he came back to me, he's like, that worked, and I'm like, but this is like 101, like. But the Tanya opened his eyes to it. The Tanya's point was every person has the ability easily to not sin. Easily. How? Because your brain is a lot stronger than your desires. So if you use your brain to actively push out of your mind any thought of sin, you could just not do it. Meaning, even if we don't have the ability to stop thinking about something. If I tell you right now, stop thinking about my hat, you can't stop thinking about my hat.
True.
What you could do is you could easily force yourself to think about something else. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sit here right now, and the way that I'm going to stop, again, the more you're feeding your brain, don't think about the hat, don't think about the hat, you're going to think about the hat. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to think about what I ate for breakfast. And I'm going to think about what I could eat for breakfast tomorrow. If you force yourself with a mental toughness to think about that, then the thought of my hat, or in the context of sin, leaves your mind. Mm-hmm. So I use that all the time when I have to sleep. If I need to go to sleep and have a humongous event the next day, and like that's the type of thing you read that people lose sleep over. Like, again, what is in your control is the ability to fall asleep. If it's going to continue to overtake you while you're sleeping, that you can't control yourself so deeply, but you just put on your brain. It happens all the time. I'm going to think about something else. I'm going to think about anything besides whatever is giving me anxiety right now. So what keeps me up at night? Hopefully nothing. I try for nothing. What keeps me up, because I'm still working and not ready to go to sleep, that all the time. But what are my concerns? I wouldn't say that I have things that are giving me anxiety. It's more just we're trying to proactively find as much as possible as we could do to make an impact on the community.
Yeah.
Are there communal nightmares No, it's just there are bigger people for that.
Yeah.
There are bigger, more important, more powerful people that are tasked with those positions. For me, it's what can we do to continue to make an impact?
And when you say impact, like to what end would you say?
To what end? To make someone's life better, to make the world a better place, to make the world a more religious place, mm-hmm. to help. I'm not talking about on a global scale, because a global scale, by the way, it's very hard to feel. On a small scale, to make an impact on someone's life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much easier to feel and do within your community, right? Rather than...
And that ultimately is how you do it on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I think some people excuse themselves from doing it on a small scale because you're busy with global aspirations. And it's hard to do it like that. There are some people that can pull it off, but...
Yeah. Well, we're about out of time, and I feel bad we went through this whole interview, and I haven't even mentioned the name Jake Ratzlaff until now. Retzlaff. There's our first step of correction. Retzlaff. Is that right?
It's not. It's come on. It's the BYU starting quarterback.
Right?
Put some respect on that. No, I'm joking.
No, let us all be corrected. Retzlaff.
You don't watch enough ESPN, do you? No, I'm joking.
Well, do they do a terrible job as well? The national media? Or they do better?
I feel like these guys have, especially like as American sports are becoming more and more like an international thing, like these guys have to practice those names.
Yeah.
Are you a basketball guy?
Oh, sure.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Oh, okay. That one I haven't got.
How many people trip over that? I still hear people like Luka Doncic.
Right.
You got to practice these things in sports. I'm joking.
So you're his rabbi. Is that a fair way to frame it?
I think at this point, now that he's been in enough headlines, he has a lot of different rabbis that will. But yeah, here in Utah, at least.
The closest one, if he needs to.
I just spoke to him half an hour ago.
Nice. Awesome. Any story there? I mean, what is that? How's that shifted the dynamic in Utah County with having our starting quarterback Jewish, or anything comes to mind?
I think that Jake has the opportunity to do what your podcast aims to do just so quickly. Mm-hmm. And that is that Jake is able to build bridges. Like anti-Semitism or lack of respect between faiths comes from a lack of familiarity with a person, I think. Like when you're looking at something as an abstract topic, an abstract thing, because you have no experience with people from that faith, right? But I'll never forget my first couple times driving into Provo after we moved here. I was like, what is going on? Like I grew up as a jazz fan. You don't drive through Salt Lake City or anywhere and see people's like porches like decked out with Utah Jazz flags.
Yeah.
When you drive into Provo, like you see BYU everywhere. BYU decals, BYU license plates, BYU flags, BYU, everything BYU. I was like amazed by it. And the leading quarterback of that team that you love is Jewish. It's like, okay. Like you're getting all this exposure to somebody so quickly because they share what you share. Like he loves football, I love football. He loves BYU, I love BYU. It's like building that bridge so quickly.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Anything else we haven't covered or important to squeeze in?
We'll
here?
leave it for the 2.0.
Part 2. You'll do part 2 with me?
Yeah, of course, please. You bring our studio audience like this here.
Yes.
A couple of Diet Cokes for my friend over here.
Maybe a coffee for you without a phone cup.
I would never drink a coffee here.
Hey, no offense taken. So awesome. Well, last question I have for you. Well,
we'll put some vague mugs and we can pretend it's water.
There we go.
You need your branded, like that's podcast 101. Please cut this out. I forget. Branson, please cut this out of the podcast. Podcast 101 before the mics, because like some people will make do with like these are fancy
swag
homemade mics. Is the branded. So there's two ways to do it. There's like the branded mugs with your logo, or there's like the mugs that have like product placement, like an advertisement.
Yes. But we just have to be very clear that it's not coffee in the mug.
I need a swig mug right here. Swig needs to sponsor this podcast. Okay.
That's a call out
and resume.
All right.
I'm joking. You can put that. I just don't want to be like putting down the podcast that has invited me here.
That's great. So 2 questions to finish off. One, if people do want more information, whether in Utah County or elsewhere, I mean, is there anywhere you'd send them? Do you want them calling? Maybe you just want them to leave you alone on the Sabbath. I don't know, but
they will not be able to reach me on the Sabbath. I assure you.
Yes.
My phone is off. JewishUtahCounty.com, or we try to be pretty active on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
This morning I posted. I told you we're trying to document our day. We'll post them here too. So I posted, we're at BYU, and I went and gave the class, and I pulled my phone out after, because we're not huge, we're a few hundred followers. Pulled my phone out, and I had a text from someone, hey, what class are you speaking in? Like, can I come join?
Oh, wow.
I was like, sorry, tomorrow. We're back tomorrow. But
cool.
So Instagram and Facebook, Jewish Utah County.
Nice. Last question I have, and it's sort of modified from the one I typically ask, is as you reflect on your time as a spiritual leader, how has being a leader helped you become a better follower of your faith?
Oh, it's so easy. Some people like have a really hard time focusing on themselves, on like when you reach moments of intensity that you have to observe. Some people want that, and it's like, I need my moment to focus. For some people, like you're just wired to work. You're wired to be busy. You're wired to help people. When you have to stop and like focus on yourself, it's like it's hard. And as far as I've seen, like there are people on each extreme. So like what I'm describing, some people are like, yeah, that's me. And some people are gonna be like, what are you talking about? Like, I wish I had the time to focus on to focus on myself more. But like when you are let's say when it comes to a holiday observance or an initiative that you're pushing and you're helping others, it just makes an impact on you like accidentally. So like it's just I've always been a person that had a much easier time feeling the intensity of a day, whether it's like the high holidays or Hanukkah or anything else in between, right? Hanukkah. I just when you're with your family, you might not even feel it as much, even though that's the way it should be, as much as when you're doing it on no sleep, throwing crazy programs and running in circles, like you end up with a lot deeper of a feeling for it that way. That's how my brain is wired.